Alright, here we are still on Chapter 2, Video 3. We are going to be starting Section 3 today, which is titled Growing Division and Reform. Today, we're going to talk about politics in the early 1800s, more importantly, kind of what's going to be going on with that growing division and how politics are going to start to change after the election of 1824. So, the first one we're going to talk about is something that's going to be known as the Missouri Compromise. And this is going to be the biggest issue of the time period in 1820, and that's going to be whether or not slavery should expand. And as you can look at the map on the right, we talked about last time Thomas Jefferson and Louisiana Purchase. Now, all this was included within that Louisiana Purchase, and the map does a great job of labeling of what's going to be considered a free state here in the red, and what's going to be considered to be a slave state here on the south. Now, this division that's going on between the North and the South is whether or not slavery should expand, should it remain the same, ultimately really what should happen with this idea of slavery. Now, with the Louisiana Territory and this idea of improving transportation, people are starting to move more and more to the west. Now, once more and more people move to the west, these unorganized territories, as you can see right here, they want to become states. But again, the issue, what should it be considered, a free state or a slave state? And Missouri is going to kind of kick this off with their application for statehood. And I've already talked about whether or not the idea of should it expand or should it not expand. Now, the issue with it being allowed or with it being able to become a state is whether or not it's going to tip the balances. Right now, as you look at it, there's going to be 11 free states and 11 slave states. Now, in the House of Representatives, that's kind of a little bit misconstrued because that's going to be based off of population. But in the Senate, it's guaranteed every single state has 2 senators. It's going to make either the slave states more powerful or the free states a little bit more powerful. So the Senate's not really going to be willing to budge on this. They want to make sure that it's going to be exactly even at 50% slave, 50% considered to be a free state. But just like almost everything in politics, there needs to be a compromise. Henry Clay, the Speaker of the House of the time period, he is going to be in charge of coming up with this compromise. And he's going to be kind of steering people either for it or against it and kind of getting them back into the table, back to this discussion. Now, the compromise, what is going to happen? Missouri is now going to be considered to be a slave state. So as you can see, looking at the map, they are going to be green. They are now going to be considered to be a slave state. Maine, they are also going to be admitted as a free state, which at this time period, they were not considered to be a state. So now the people in Maine, they want to break off. They're now going to become their own free state. So as you're probably looking at it, if you're counting, it's 12 to 12. However, probably the biggest and most important decision to come out of it, slavery is now going to be prohibited in the rest of the Louisiana Territory north of Missouri. So as you're looking at it, anything that's going to be north of this location is now going to be considered to be a free state. In the South, they still have the opportunity, or if you want to call it the opportunity, they are still going to be voting on. But anything that is going to be north of it is going to be considered to be a free state. Now, the election of 1824. And I will preface by saying that this is, I know I probably think I'm a nerd for saying this, but this is my favorite out of all the different elections, so I'll try to keep it short, talking about kind of the main bullet points of exactly what's going to be happening here. So maybe I should have called it the election of 1824 on top, but the corrupt bargain is mostly what it's going to be known for today. At this time period, with the era of good feelings, and we've talked about some of the different political parties, we've talked about George Washington did not want to have any single political party, but at this time period, 1824, there is only going to be one. There's not going to be Federalists, there's not going to be Democrats, they are all going to be known as the Democratic Republicans. Now, with that being said, you're not going to be able to get every single person in the United States to say, yes, I want this person, I want Andrew Jackson, I want Henry Clay, I want him to be president. So it's going to be divided. It's going to be divided into regions. Now, Andrew Jackson, in the election of 1824, he wins the popular vote. He also has the most in the Electoral College. And we've talked about some of the issues in the Electoral College. This is going to be another one. If you don't have over half of the votes in the Electoral College, you are not the winner. So Andrew Jackson, he has the most popular votes, he has the most electoral votes, but he does not have a simple majority. Therefore, in our Constitution, it says, if there is not a majority in the Electoral College, it goes to the House of Representatives. Now, there are 4 people running. Henry Clay, he took 4th. Therefore, he is eliminated from contention. But his next step here is very important. As it goes to the House of Representatives, Henry Clay is currently the Speaker of the House. And as it says on there, it says the SOH, that's just shorthand, Speaker of the House. Now, he's eliminated from contention. However, as a member of the House, and in pretty much being in charge of the House of Representatives, he has a ton of say. He has a ton of power, and he's going to go around telling people, you need to vote for John Quincy Adams. I think John Quincy Adams is going to be the next person who should be president. He's the best candidate for the job. And in the end, the House of Representatives, they vote in John Quincy Adams. So Adams elected president. Henry Clay is now the Secretary of State. Now, a lot of people kind of question, a lot of people are wondering, is it odd that John Quincy Adams just won the presidency after Henry Clay told everyone to vote for him, and now Henry Clay is the Secretary of the State? A lot of people at this time cried foul, and none of them cried foul more than Andrew Jackson. Because of this, Andrew Jackson, he starts his own political party. He is the founder of the modern-day Democratic Party. Because he didn't have the majority in the Electoral College, because the House of Representatives did not vote him in, he thought that there was some sort of bargain, some sort of deal that took place behind closed doors. Yes, Adams is elected president. Yes, Henry Clay is now the Secretary of State. Unfortunately, he cannot do anything at this time period and has to wait until 1828. And the last one that we're going to do is this new era in politics. I'll try to keep it short here. Most states, they get rid of ownership as a voting qualification. And this is something that it was kind of done in the early revolutionary time period. In order to vote, you had to pay taxes, you had to own property. If you did not do either of those, you weren't necessarily looked down upon, but they did not think that you had a right to be able to vote. And most states, they start to get rid of that. As long as you pay tax, as long as you're a citizen, and I guess if you're a citizen, basically you're always paying taxes, you have that right to vote. And between 1824 and 1828, there's almost 1 million more citizens that vote in this next election cycle. But the candidates in 1828, it's now going to be Andrew Jackson versus John Quincy Adams. They resort to what's known as mudslinging. And this is a campaign strategy still used today. It basically is, we are going to point the finger. If you vote in Andrew Jackson, this is going to happen. If you vote in John Quincy Adams, we're going to continue to have this. But both people, they start to judge and start to try to ruin the other person's character to make themselves look better. Now, Andrew Jackson, 1828, he is going to win. Once he wins, there's going to be a new era in politics. First thing he does, he uses what's known as the spoils system. And what that means, if you're a member in the cabinet, odds are you are the same political party as the president. That's the spoils system. You are going to appoint people to the government based upon their party loyalty. Something that's been around for quite some time. Andrew Jackson is going to kind of be starting this. He also is going to create a national nominating convention. And this is done to make it a little bit more open, make it a little bit more fair for people to run for office. Because it used to be a term known as a caucus, and we still do have a caucus today in many states, but they were run a little bit different back then. When someone would run for office, whether it be in the state level, whether it be at the federal level, the members of the House, members of the Senate, they would get together and they would say, we want John Quincy Adams, for example. Now, those 100 members just elected or just decided who was going to run for that political party, who was going to run for that specific position. By having a national nominating convention, it opens it up so now the average, everyday citizen gets a say in that. So, to kind of wrap it up, kind of the big points at this time period is going to be how Andrew Jackson, he called foul with the election of 1824, kind of had this new era in politics in 1828, and really at this time period, Now is when we're going to have two political parties, just like we had today. We had the Republicans, we had the Democrats. Now, 1828, they had the Democrats. The Republican Party is not really going to be around until the late 1850s. But we start to have that spoil system. We start to have it a little bit more open for people to be in this this nominating convention process. So, as always, make sure you're taking your notes. Make sure you come up with those discussion questions that I can talk to you in class tomorrow.